Welcome. This is Larafeticus. About 3 weeks ago, I released a challenge map for Ministry that I made named Pinnacle Retreat. And at the time, I promised a walkthrough later on to prove that it's possible to beat it. This video is the walkthrough. So the design of it is, I'm trying to recreate something that could be part of the Mindustry campaign, so like not sort of using world processors to do wild things, not breaking the way the game flows, trying to fix some of the bad habits that the campaign has. And I'm really happy with the outcome. The initial opening up right here, beryllium first, I am intentionally leaving space for hydrogen pipes to go in later. That's going to be really big for the efficiency. It's a lot faster to put in hydrogen once I have it than to take the time to capture other beryllium locations, although I will get some of those at some point. One of the design goals that I had was I wanted there to be multiple paths through the map that are all difficult but viable, and you can do a lot of different things to win, and it's not just one route all the way through. I've got 3 videos total for the 3 paths that I sort of designed as supposed to be possible. The overall goal of the map is I wanted to set it up so that you have to abandon your landing site base, this one right here that I'm working on. You have to abandon it because you are completely surrounded by wave spawn points, and eventually it might be one of the earlier waves, it might be the last wave that's full of T5s. You'll get surrounded in a way that is not defensible. But there's other core locations on the map that change all of the multiple entryway points into a single choke point. So the whole concept of the map, the goal is you have to fight your way to that core location with enough time left to build up to stop a bunch of T5s coming through a single choke point. And so the different ways to do it break down into different paths to get from the spawn to there. There's a high path, a mid path, and a low path. I've got a video recorded for going each way, and they're pretty close to being the same difficulty for each one. This video is the mid path, and I had a hard time deciding like which one of the routes to be the video, and I figured that I would just show the ugliest one. So, this has mistakes in it, and I just barely pull it off at the end, so maybe there's a little more tension. But some of the other ones, I get to the defensible face sooner with more resources and end up being able to seal it up a lot harder. Okay, so I've progressed up to Silicon. I've got my tanks coming out. The tanks are needed to find some of the closer additional resources, and I'm starting to plan defenses. So one of the weird things about this setup that is way different than like playing PvP like I always do is breaches are actually necessary and useful. They are sort of the core of keeping yourself alive through the first 10 waves or so. As there's 4 different directions that stuff is going to come through. It's going to pass by some economically important areas, and so you need to do some walling off, and you need breaches to be covering a lot of space for eludes fly by, and you still need to be able to pick them off without devoting important ground units to it or something like that. So the tank has revealed this additional beryllium, and I'm gonna wall off and defend at this point. The additional beryllium income is necessary to keep building until I find the first tungsten. There's tungsten further to the south, but you have to do some fighting to get it. And there's a weaker defensive position to the north right here that has tungsten, and that's the one that I'm going to go for. Notice also that there is 3 tiles of wall tungsten right there. That's also pretty important, but I can't access that until I find some ground tungsten. So my pipes are planned out, some of my breach locations are planned out, and I'm also starting to plan out some of the walls. I won't actually be able to build them until the beryllium income increases. I'm doing a lot of manual mining. There are intentional hand mining locations near the core to make it a little more convenient. First iteration of this map didn't have those, and I expected people, if you needed hand mining, that you would have to fly over, fill up your player ship, and then fly back and drop it off, and that was just annoying. I took that out. Busy work is not fun. I'm not going to ask people to do it. So this technique, drop some walls over those breaches. They're being fed ammo through an impact doing tungsten. So that's going to drain out their ammo, and as soon as I find an opening, which happens just after an impact pump, send up the tanks, hit the ducts, and then that is neutralized, and I need to clear out that space. Alright, so that tungsten will be open soon. Do some planning and building. 3 minutes till the first wave. I want to have at least 2 or 3 of the entrances with some sort of defense or block off. That vent there on the south edge of the screen, I can't actually take that because there is a breach in the fog of war that will shoot it if I try to. It's important to get water into things. That makes the breaches a lot more effective, especially relative to how expensive they are to build. Although I'm doing pretty good on cost for everything except beryllium. And I'm going to start working on a belt that comes down here, and this is tungsten transport from the impacts up there. I intentionally use this like 1 gap of spacing in between all belts as sort of like my standard bus, and that makes it a lot easier to pull off an individual type for like a unit factory or something, since the bridge you need an unloader or a duct router or an overflow or an underflow or something, and then it can chain bridges and step over it easily. Whereas if everything is packed right next to each other, then you have to start doing extra weird stuff to other belts to make room if you want to pull off a thing of a belt. 1 minute to the wave. Sort of fill out a bit more of the coverage space for the breaches. Another important part of actually managing this is because there's a lot of enemies, they're not smart, they're just going to go for the core, but they will take opportunity shots along the way. So paying attention to target priority while they're moving helps you manage the enemy fire that's incoming and make sure that it's shooting at things that can stand up to it and not like pieces of economy that you need to go back and fix. Like, they will target units first. So if I place my tanks carefully, I can make sure that these ducts aren't getting knocked out as enemy units pass by. They also target turrets before other structures. So if I space out turrets, and every now and then I might want to make sure that they stay repaired, then that will also distract enemy units from firing on important pieces of economic infrastructure. So that layout of Boris, I've played this map so many times in playtesting that I end up doing the same thing every time, and to leave space for the pipe and where to put the pipe, and that sort of thing. I play tested this so as to not require any pausing, especially not any save scumming. I understand that some people playing it have been pausing or save scumming or something. I can't stop you, whatever you need to have fun, but keep in mind that it is possible to do it without those things. I haven't built any map specific schematics. Like a lot of these sort of drill arrangements, I could plan those out in advance and just drop the whole thing. That would be faster. I haven't done that. That might be another advantage that someone needs to take to beat the map. I am against sort of static PvP maps for that reason. Like it encourages players to make schematics like that. The schematics that I do end up using here, I think only end up being sort of things that are already in my library from PvP purposes. Like there's a power plant that I'll use that's from a schematic, and it's not specific for this map. I do end up stretching power a little bit thin. These tanks are spread out to be drawing fire away from the ducts that I want to stay running. That was just the first single tank wave. Another thing to note is that some of these paths have connections with other paths off in the darkness, and so if you seal it off completely, it will lead to units going all the way around to the place you want them to go through. So like that southeast path, normally I just block it off completely. It helps in some ways. It is not a solves that from pathfinding for all time, because there will be waves with quabs that will just walk over that. So you still need to cover it with something. And eventually there's a wave with flying units too, so you can't ignore the existence of flying units. You eventually have to put up defense that can protect from directions that hadn't seen any threats before that point. All right, opening up the better tungsten and sort of the initial construction oxide. Normally I'd be trying to get large amount, I'd be directing the heat from those to make nitrogen for more wall bores, but I don't need any more large plasma bores. That's the only spot I really need. So just one oxide of heat will keep that boosted. So that's the future planning there. Fill out more of the breaches to keep things a bit more solidly safe up until, like wave 10 or so. The major key for safety that you can stop worrying about things is at least 2 sublimates covering an entrance. That will hold off most stuff, since there won't be anything. Well, there's Anthicus, like wave 29 or so, or wave 30, whatever. Oh, no, it's 26 total, so Anthicus are like 25. But yeah, the ozone sublimates are going to be doing the major work. Oh, there goes a walker over the lower wall. Breach ready to take care of it. The distribution of incoming forces is not even. There's like 13 spawns total, and they're all spawning the same unit composition. But only 2 of them are coming through the southwest. There's 2 of them between the southeast and the east. And then the rest of them, like 8 spawns worth, are coming at various distances from the north. So that's sort of the position that sees the most pressure, that particular choke point. We're planning, forcing someone to use less than optimal wet green tiles to get some power out here. That was another thing that I wanted to do, is like design a setup where doing suboptimal things were still useful, which is, again, quite unlike all the PvP impulses. But I can, there's still enough wet green here to power 3 of these combustion, and that will get me to higher unit production. Like the enemy bases that are protecting higher resources, so more tungsten, thorium, they're sort of intentionally designed to be good against particular units or compositions and able to be beaten by others. So you may pick the units that you like, and there's an obvious way that you should go from that point, because you've got a few options for what bases to attack. And if you decide that you want to take only T1 units, but all of them against the north base, then you're going to have a hard time. Holding it off. No. And the main purpose, so that's a schematic, that's a PvP schematic that I use. The 6 oxide things with heat coming out. And the purpose of that is I plan to put a carbide crucible on there and stock that up for the building that I'll have to do at the end of the game. But doing it now in advance, and that oxide will be useful because I'm gonna have to build 15 or 20 sublimates scattered around, and those are pretty oxide expensive. This one's a schematic for full water conversion into hydrogen and ozone. And I need a lot of those for sublimate fuel and to go into the oxide dudes. And I did, when I set up all those graphite drills, I intentionally left the space for that single pipe to be able to weave through. So that was like some planning ahead in advance. And this little bit of space that I'm over there, that's gonna end up going to unit production. And like the guide for approaches, you can push to the south. There's a base there. You can push through it with T1 units, not eludes. You don't have tungsten if you go that way first, so you can do it with tanks. And once you get down there, there is ground tungsten available. And so with the ground tungsten, then you can start building crabs or T2 units. You can also just use tanks or whatever to take the tungsten that is right to the north. But you'll notice there weren't really any other resources around that at all. It's just that patch of tungsten. While the direction of the south has a lot more stuff available, and because it's only got two spawns coming from the south, so it's much easier to hold an economy in that space and not have to worry about a lot of intermediate defenses. Like you can go all the way down and then build a little fort and be safe. Versus if you push to the north, you're still getting attacks from multiple directions, so it's harder to defend, even though it's easier to take. On the third exit, or the third route, is to use averts to scout directly to the west. Over the wall to the west there's an opening on the other side It's guarded by some breaches, but it has a large amount of resources available. And the sort of gatekeeper to it is you can't get over there until you have averts to at least scout the space open. My plan is to build averts and scout that, and then use ozone bombs to neutralize the fort. And then I'm going to claim that space, and I'm going to use yeet boxes to send units over there to upgrade to T3 and use that to work on the final base. It was against my intention, but some of my server players that I showed the map to while I was developing it, they still managed to beat the game by fortifying the starting hex. If you rush up to tech and you build the big turrets, I think Smite was involved, something like that, then it was possible to hold the middle. It still probably is possible, but it's a ton of work. I'm not aware of anyone having done it since I released the final version, as one of the changes was I added Conquest to the final spawn. And the intention there is that when the Conquest and the Kalaris spawn in the final wave, they all converge on the initial base quickly and at the same time. But the base that you're supposed to take, the cat is digging in a box. Cat, can you do that quieter? Can you chill out? Oh, she's gonna get in a mood. If you take the defensible base, then the Kalaris arrive first because they're so much faster, and the Conquest arrive second, so it's easier to beat them separately. All right, and that starts up the Avert factory. I'm not bothering to put a timer on this video. Sort of the shorthand for how much time has passed is 10 minutes to start and then 2 minutes per wave. So this is 26 minutes into the game. Another big design goal I had is to respect the player's time by not making something that, like, you could take 3 or 4 hours to do it really lazy, like, or grind through a ton of stuff, like an attack map with a huge number of bases that aren't particularly interesting. There's just a lot of them. The point here was the game should be an hour long. That's a nice amount of time for a session of playing Mindustry. And at the end of that, either you win or you've lost before that. And you can do the replays whenever you want. Alright, so setting up some of the wiring in anticipation of getting the tungsten to build the carbide thing. I've got a few more solo mates I need to put down. Another really important part of making these defenses sustainable and not being able to pay attention to do them is absolutely necessary, is to add the mender. There won't be enough concentrated fire coming in to kill anything permanently if it's in mender coverage. And I've got plenty of hydrogen floating around to run these things. So 2 supplements on each entrance, maybe a little bit more on the north, and that covers all the ground attacks. And there's the reveal of the mid base. Another intentional piece of design is you can use the beam tower to get power from your starter base to over there. And I'll need 2 menders to cover all of this stuff, and it'll be safe. So with just these walls and the menders, the right side is now safe from ground. The south is covered. The northwest a little iffier, but now I want to start filling up ozone tanks to do the bombing to clear out the expansion. So fly over. That was a fail. You don't want to go straight at the breaches. They will shoot down your player. And make sure that if I fill up the tanks at the end of the network, they'll fill up a lot further faster than if I try and do it like near the production end of the pipes, just sort of the way that stuff flows towards the end and then sort of stacks up there. Take another try at this. Didn't get it off. There's a lot of like spamming the bracket key to try and do a drop, but there is intentionally some stuff in the way so that you can't like drop the bomb right in the middle and take out multiple breaches at the same time. That's a good landing, yeah. So they blow up the tank and the explosion takes out a breach. I'm intentionally not really defending this stuff since I now have the wall tungsten that works a lot better. And also rebuilding it is pretty cheap and easy. But that's going to put me, not holding that puts me in more of a tungsten deficit than I have in some of the other playthroughs. That's a good bomb. The healer I put in turned off one of my water to gas factories. So some of the waves are intentionally more challenging by concentrating in a particular unit type. Like the 10th wave is intentionally all eludes to try and, rush through any porous defenses and go straight for the core. I think it might be 15 is all crab units to walk over any walled off defenses that might otherwise have been weaker than they should be. Around 20 is all averts, and so those attack in completely different places than the waves normally do. So at some point I'm going to start putting up extra sublimits in unusual places because I've ended up learning where the averts end up attacking. Yep, there's those eludes, and with all the sublimits in place, they get thinned off pretty quickly. There goes the last breach. So once that blows up, I move the averts over to start clearing things off, and I can start building into this expansion. There's tungsten, there's sand walls and graphite, and several good thorium spots. You can get a lot of resources out of there. Okay, messed with the pipes a little bit to make sure that ozone was going to the north from that one factory. To put that back in at some point. Alright, so this is a Clearway factory. I'm pulling off the main bus to build it. And the main goal of this is not to build Clara here, but I plan to yeet them over to the expansion I'm opening up. And those are going to go into antikyths. Now at this point, I am a little iffy on power. So there's also some larger arcosite wet green. There's some larger wet green towards the west that I'm also going to put a bigger power plant on. It's still going to end up in a shortage when the T3 factories are running, but it ends up being fine. That might be something I should do differently. Well, there's other things that should be done differently during this game. It ends up working, even though it's not optimal. Now, one of the things to know in advance, or you learn the first time you don't do it, taking this base, some of the enemy spawns approach from the south here and will pass through, and if you build economy here, it'll get taken out by passing enemies. So you need to put some of the sublimate defenses here before you actually build economy. And that's the point of that water to gas and this little bunker here. And there's the wet green that I'm going to put a power plant on. Another further out thing to pay attention to is once the spawning core is gone and you've moved to the other base, the pathing of the enemy units changes, and so they're going to come through this section from the other direction. And in that case, you end up wanting sublimates also on the other side to keep this power plant alive. Or, just expect to lose it. One of those. But yeah, my power is grim. I need to finish that. And this you'll want the regen projectors here as well. We're starting to send T2s through. The sublimates still take care of those nicely. All right, halfway through the waves. All right, time to get the thorium. The plan that I have in this game, and it is a mistake, is to hand carry thorium from here back to the core and deposit it. It ends up being a lot more work and attention than just building a yeet box back and forth for materials, and it also doesn't work when I decide I need more tungsten and start using some of that wall tungsten and don't have a way to send it back. But this is gonna pretty easily get me enough tungsten to build the carbide crucible, and then I'm gonna start stockpiling for the turrets that I need to survive wave 26. Alright, and while those fill up, this is one of the sublimates that you need to protect against air. You need one to the south also. That also covers quabs coming in. I can both carry it and carry the container that's got it in there, and end up moving 140 thorium over with extra steps. I think I need 10 more to build the crucible, But all the pipes and ducts are already in place for that, so that's just a matter of building it, and then it'll start running. A big part of playing this map does end up being sort of planning ahead infrastructure. All right, what am I doing next? Okay, so for the T3, I'm gonna need sand and graphite to silicon, nitrogen, and the output thorium from those drills. And the part that ends up slowing me down, that I should have not decided to do it that way, is the construction thorium for the T3 fabricators, the primes. Yeah, I'm gonna hand carry the stuff back and forth for that, and it's gonna be a waste of time. But I can do work with the averts while I'm waiting for that construction to come up. Yeah. Cheap, lazy nitrogen. That one's a PvP schematic. Also, relatively power hungry. It's not going to do any favors for my power situation. The space available is a little awkward, so I'm not using a T3 schematic. Another reason to regret not automating the thorium delivery is I am going to want thorium when I'm setting up the defensible base for build towers, and it's not going to be readily available if I'm rationing every piece carried by hand. Like, need like 100 per build tower, and I'm gonna want to build a lot of those. Should have built that bottom one first, since it's the unloading into the second one. Plenty of mistakes all over the place. And one atmospheric condenser cannot support 2 T3 factories, so those are going to blink even when stuff's coming through. Yep. Alright, challenge wave. All quaps. And there they go, walking over stuff, taking pot shots at infrastructure. This spot at least has the tanks standing by to cover it. A little bit of rebuilding to do, but yeah, we're still hanging on. Hooray for the rebuild button. Do you want back in, cat? Yeah, you do. Come up here and watch this game. Alright, filling out some more space on the regen projector coverage. Forgetting to put in some liquid routers, so some things are going ungassed. Still need more thorium. there's a little bit of defenses between this base and the final base that I need to crack. The final base has 2 lusters on the front door to present it's designed to be strong against tanks and slow ground units. And there's an afflict in it also that you'll need to sort of cut off the supporting infrastructure. Yeah, and I want to make sure some of this stuff goes up before I actually build a core down there, or the avert wave comes. One of the other things that I intentionally did is there are a number of vents on the map, and I didn't want somebody to be able to do a cheese by sneaking off to a distant location and taking a vent and building something. So almost all of the vents are covered by some kind of enemy turret that prevents you from just building on it without first doing something to capture it. There is one notable exception. There's a little teardrop to the south of the Pinnacle base, the final one that you're supposed to take and build on, where you can get a couple vents. And one of the sort of early ideas that I thought as a way to break into there would be to reveal that spot, build on the vents, and then put a payload mass driver in there, and you could send units into the little teardrop and use that to attack from the back side of the base. And that ended up not being what I do in any of the playthroughs, although I'm sure somebody could manage to do it. And the thing about it is you need to have at least one avert to reveal that before you can build on it. But there are other spots in the backside of the final base that you can build the mass driver without needing any air units to reveal it. So, like, one of the playthroughs is doing it that way. Alright, the path is clear to start walking the Anthicus over and start hitting the front door. We will return to ozone bombing to take care of several parts of the final base. There's a lot of disperses in there. I did not want air cheese to be something that you could just do to quickly wrap up the base, like is possible in almost every campaign map that doesn't ban air units. It'd be nice if there was at least one more turret kind that was air only for more options in that space, but nope, all we have to work with are disperses. So we need to do the reveal over here. There's the lusters. And now I can drop the ozone bombs. Yeah, tasty kibble, huh? No, you want the wet food. Well, tough. You already had your wet food today. Yep. And here I am with the tungsten shortage. Now that I have my one wall bore feeding into 2 T2 factories, my actual tungsten income is pretty bad. And so I'm going to do some flailing here, unable to even build the bomb tanks. I think eventually I'll break down and try and put another wall drill in the expansion and manually carry it around. All right, that's a good bomb. So 1 luster down and some materials leaking. And I'll start sending Anthicus that way. Especially miserable since it takes tungsten to build these things. Here I am being bad at economy. Right, second luster's down, and you can see the span of some of the disperses in there, protecting the north side of the Pinnacle base. Doing what I can to try and fit a little bit more nitrogen production for the T3 stuff. I'm pretty much starting multiple building projects without finishing them and ending up with nothing. Where did I send those averts? There. What are they doing? Are they getting hit by disperses? No, good. Alright, so disperses cleared out, that north breach cleared out. Get the power plant and the slag pumps, and then slowly the afflict power will drain out, and then that'll be easier to remove. And that's what's guarding the actual core location. And then I'll be able to start actually building down there. Oh, gross. Wasted tungsten. Don't do it. Oh, alright, here's the avert wave, and there they are shooting at some of the base locations that have not been subject to fire earlier in the game, especially that upper left corner there. You want to be real careful for pipe leaks, especially on the ozone, because if that drains out and wastes, then the main defensive structures might go down. Send the tanks. Come on. What are you doing? Wake up. All that's cheap stuff. It ends up being fine. All the avert's dead. Okay. conflict is now unheated and unpowered, although those disperses still have some ammo in them. But that is the final cleanup there. And I'm going to move to working exclusively on the final base there. And actually, maybe I should turn off the avert factory. Well, it's not. It's at unicap anyway, so it's not building anything. All right, so we've got wet green. We've got some wet red. First thing I need here is a power plant. And that's gonna turn into a nitro factory, and then build towers are gonna be speeding this up. I have 8 minutes until doom, so we are getting as much build as we can. 1.2k carbide in the bank from that factory that's been going this whole time. That's very important to have around. That nice thorium spot there, I'm going to need some of that, and there is wall tungsten both to the south and the north here. I'm going to take the south one. One of the gotchas of this base is don't build anything important on the right side, because when the Caleras walk through, they're going to be in range of that and they're going to take shots of it. You want to concentrate stuff to the left. But they're all going to be funneled through that one entry doorway. The northern entry of that base is a over wet red entry, so eludes will go that way, but none of the walking units will path find. Although it is possible to manually control and walk quabs through that entryway. I do that in one of the other playthroughs. So low on tungsten. Build the tank. Come on. Come on. Oof. So I also need units down there. As soon as I finish the core, then the spawn behavior is going to change, and several of the spawns are going to end up heading in that direction. So I'm going to need the units as initial defense against the regular waves. Get down there and get building. Come on. You don't have much time left. There we go. Cores are so slow to build. And I'll be able to pull some hydrogen out of my power plant to run these things, and also nitrogen from what I already have to boost them. If I had a better setup in the second base, then I wouldn't actually need this resource production, and I'd be able to go straight to working on defenses, but that's not what I've done. You also end up, well, the choice that I make for defense is going to be big walls, build towers, and lusters with lots of nitrogen. So that's also a silicon bottleneck, so I'm going to end up needing to build some silicon down here too. Like that 1,000 in the bank is going to go real fast. There's the blue beams. That's going well. Now let's start building the defensive line. So build towers, lusters, and lots of walls. The hard thing about defending Kalaris is their shot is big and strong, but it's also got a huge number of after contact projectiles that spread out. So you need multiple layers of walls, not only to break up the first shot, but to intercept all the ones that come after it. And even then, it's like, even with regen projector stuff on it, it's gonna get eaten through real fast. Like even the strong walls. But also the expensive building materials are in limited supply, so I kind of need those for the lusters. And I'm also going to want another nitrogen source to actually fuel these things, but okay. And what we got, like 4 minutes left? Well, 4 minutes and then some, because it's going to take a little bit of time for the Kalaris all to actually get over here. And then there'll also be another minute or two of waiting for the Conquerors to get over here. Not great sand wall, but it's what's over here. Put some more build towers in this direction, make that power plant go faster. So with that power plant, I'll be able to put up another nitro factory. There will be another point in time of sort of using unit knowledge to manage attacks when the Kalaris show up. They target units first, so I'm going to use the units to draw their fire away from more valuable targets, like the lusters and the build towers. And there's also the matter of Kalaris not targeting air, so the averts can do some free damage by flying out and taking pot shots. Yeah, and there's that silicon bottleneck. Now we just need tons of walls. I'll probably run myself out of beryllium doing this and end up regretting that. You know, there's not much sort of stockpile storage available. Yeah, silicon, that's what that's waiting for. The tanks left over there, those aren't useful anymore. But all of the Anthicus and Averts that I can get over here are. And since I built the core of the Unicap rows, so the factories have started back up. The silicon shortage has made me decide that I'm not going to have silicon to build more lusters, even though I really would like to. So I'm going to put that carbide into walls instead, and hopefully those will hold up a bit better to the Kalaris shots as they're coming through. Well, I want most of those shots to be... here they are. So, Wave 26, the big siege engines on their way to destroy me after my escape, if the story matters. I don't know. I wanted some story elements in here to like sort of demonstrate that it's possible to, you know, campaign maps could be telling some kind of story instead of just be like, go here and then go there and then go there. Unlock a tech. The Anthicus do good damage, although those walls, even 2 layers, don't last long. 4 lusters. Those will take hits if I lose this pile of units. I want to maneuver them so that they're doing as well behind walls as they can. I also need to look out for draining nitrogen destroyed pipes. That was a quick disassemble there at the router to stop it from draining out. So at this point, it's getting real hairy. So some of the other playthroughs, this is not dangerous, but... Alright. That was the last Calaris, and now there's just Conkers left, and it's going to take them a while to get here, and I'll be able to do some rebuilding in the meantime. So the hard part is past. I just barely held on to that. You can't fly the averts around freely, as there's still enemy bases around in directions that I didn't go. Now I'm being bitten by the beryllium shortage. My main base is long gone, I presume, although I haven't looked over to see it being destroyed. I was busy at the time. That was another sort of important design goal of making this map, is I wanted the time limit to be tight enough that you couldn't destroy everything. You just wouldn't have time. If you stopped to beat all of the bases on your way here, then the Calaris would arrive much sooner than you could be ready for them. One Conquer down. Nice and isolated from everything else that spawned. Well, those shots do hurt, and they hit air, but turret rotation speed, I can dance around these things and distract them really easily. Although, two of them, not so great. I'd rather them shooting at the averts than the Anthicus. That's a good spot to park them. Two Conkers left. Lusters power through them. Where's the last one? There we go. Now that there's only one, I can spin it around in circles all I want. Fancy bull skull looking thing. Boom. And there's the victory. Thanks for watching. Yeah, I'll put the links to the map in the description and stuff if people don't have it yet and still want to get it and try maybe one of the other ways or something. See ya.